let's get started, everyone. Thank you all for joining. My name is Mary Eleanor Power, and I am the Director of Marketing Communications for Dalhousie University's College of Continuing Education. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging that Dalhousie University is located in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq. We are all treaty people. And thank you for joining us for today's webinar, 10 Tips for Succeeding at Language Learning Online. And I'll do some brief introductions to our hosts today. So Jennifer MacDonald is with us, and she is the head teacher of English Language Studies at Dalhousie University, where she is the academic lead on a variety of online and face-to-face programs in English for academic purposes, professional development for language educators, and internationalization of the curriculum. And Tracy Franz is also joining us. She is an e-learning project manager, a certified instructional designer, and a writer, editor, and author. She has 20 years experience teaching and designing face-to-face, online, and blended courses for adult learners in Canada, the US, and Japan. So thank you both very much for joining us. We're delighted to have you with us. Thank you everyone for coming, and looking forward to learning over the next 30 minutes. And we'll just mention too, as a brief side note, that if you have any questions, please feel free to include them in the chat throughout. And I'll pop in a note and flag any questions, but also if we have any time at the end, we can certainly address them then. So Jennifer and Tracy, over to you.
Great, hello. Thank you, Mary Eleanor. We're really happy to be here with you today to talk about language learning online. As the title of this webinar states, we have 10 tips for you to think about as you embark upon language learning online.
Okay, I would encourage you at some point to spend some time with these tips later and think about them, write down your ideas and answers to some of the things that come up today. This will help you to make an action plan for your online learning. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So this is our first tip. To identify your motivation and set goals. So this is a really good place to start for your learning. First, consider, why do you want to learn an additional language? List your reasons. It could be for education, travel, work, friendship, etc. Then think about this in terms of specific goals. What are your short-term goals? What are your long-term goals? Short-term goals, they take a shorter amount of time, obviously. So that could be something like learning 50 new academic words this month, or speaking to someone in your target language this week. Long-term goals, those are goals that take longer. It could even be a couple of years. That could be something like getting a degree at a Canadian university. So it can, of course, be very helpful to start with a long-term goal and then break it down into a number of those necessary short-term goals. As well, it can be helpful to think about what will motivate you to achieve these goals. So consider your intrinsic motivation. That's motivation that comes from within. For example, fun or enjoying a challenge. And then also extrinsic motivation, which is something that comes from external factors. That could be some kind of reward, it could be a diploma, it could be educational or economic status even. Okay, let's take a look at the next slide.
Okay, I wanted to add too, as we move on to the next slide, feel free to drop into the chat. What are your goals? Your short-term, your long-term, those of you listening today from many places, what are your language learning goals? And maybe some of them have changed in the last several months. So please feel free to share with us as we go through your reaction to some of what we're sharing with you today.
Great. Okay. So next, know your preferences. There are many options out there. How do you like to learn? Consider the different modalities, and these are ways of learning. Note that some of them are overlapping. There's face-to-face, that's traditional learning in the classroom, online, blended, which is a mix of face-to-face and online, synchronous, this means it's happening at the same time, so just like the Zoom call today. Asynchronous, it's not happening at the same time, so that could be something like a discussion forum or doing a project or homework, something like that outside of the class. Autonomous and independent, that means self-directed and you set the pace. And finally, with a teacher or with learners, this is when the teacher directs the pace and content. So having an awareness of these options and what you prefer will help you choose what's the best mix for you. Obviously, face-to-face may not be an option right now for everyone, but if you know what you prefer, which modality you prefer, you might want to aim for learning options that include some synchronous learning components with a teacher in a digital classroom, for example. Okay, next. Yes, so let's get organized. Are you prepared to learn online? Set up your workspace. This does not need to be a huge dedicated space, but you want it to be comfortable and appropriate for your learning situation. Check your technology requirements. Do you have what you need? So do you have the device, laptop, headphones, etc.? And then schedule some time for learning. And this doesn't have to be a huge chunk of time. Many of us don't have that available to us. But you can break up your study time into smaller chunks throughout the day or week. And this is actually ideal for language learning. Okay, now let's talk about what to learn. Jennifer.
Okay, so now once you've identified your goals, you've thought about how you best learn and what your preferences are, and you've set up your workspace and thought about how you'll manage your time. Now is time to dive into the actual learning. So as you're language learning online, and especially if you're doing a self-created and self-directed language learning program, you want to think about two types of skills, okay? So one is receptive skills. So this is the skills for receiving information in the target language. So we generally think of this as listening skills and reading skills. So if you're learning English, for example, you need to improve your ability to receive information in English through your ears and through your eyes. So let's talk about some resources that you might use to improve your listening and reading skills while studying online. An important thing to realize as you're looking for sources to develop your receptive skills is to follow your interests and your level. If you're a beginner in the language that you're learning, don't try to read advanced novels in that language, or it might be very frustrating. Similarly, if you enjoy reading about news and the economy, okay, maybe when you look for ways to develop your receptive skills, you might look for news media, for example. If you enjoy sports, maybe you want to look on some sites, some podcasts that focus on sports. So it's really important, once again, to know yourself. So thinking of this, there are different sites online. I mean, there are multiple media sites. So news media, public, private, in every country of the world, there's different sites. Now, some sites have features that can help you take into account your level. I've put up here on the screen an example from Voice of America Learning English site. And so as you can see along the top menu, we have, they have content here, it's mostly based on current events and news, both texts and videos, but they have it graded at different levels, beginning, intermediate, and advanced. So you can read articles and listen to content that is appropriate to your level. Different languages and different sites have something similar. So there are, if you're learning French, if you look on TV5, you can find a variety of reading and listening material or viewing material in different levels. Another thing to take into consideration as you're especially as you're looking for video or audio content, is to use the tools that are built into many web sources. I've put an example on the screen of TED. I think many of us know the TED.com. There's a lot of interesting stuff on here that can be really great to help your language learning. Make sure you take advantage of two things. The first is the closed captioning. So this is the text that appears on the screen, and you can have it in the same language as the audio you're listening to, or in another language. There's also on TED, for example, there's a transcript, and this comes at the bottom of the screen below the video. And this is the full text of what's being said in the video. The transcript can also come in 21 languages. So you can use these different tools to help your learning. Captions and transcripts, they don't take away from your learning, they can help it. Let's talk now about productive skills. So we've talked very quickly about resources for improving your listening and reading. Now, what about productive skills? So this is your ability to produce information in the target language or the language you're learning. So generally, when we talk about productive skills, we think about speaking and writing. Now, admittedly, these can be a bit tricky sometimes for us to practice. It can be quite easy online to find articles or videos or audio podcasts, for example, to listen to improve our receptive skills. But productive skills can be a bit harder. So I'm going to give a couple of examples and suggestions of things you might consider. The first is chatbots. Okay, what is this? These are robots essentially driven by AI or artificial intelligence that allow you to have a text conversation in the language that you're learning. I've put an example on the screen of a chatbot called Andy that's used to learn and practice English. And it's called AI, artificial intelligence, for a reason. They're very intelligent, and you can actually have a conversation with a chatbot and improve your writing and your written output. And this can help you practice typing speed, fluency in writing, spelling, grammar, etc. Similar to a chatbot, there are different apps and programs out there that use other forms of technology to help you work on your productive skills. I've put an example of another one called Mondly, and Mondly has content in many different languages. Mondly uses several different technologies, including technologies to teach and present new information to you. It has a chatbot integrated, and it also uses augmented reality to give you chances to produce the language you're learning, both in text as well as spoken. Another great way to work on productive skills, once again in writing, is by starting a blog. Now, a blog can be set up in different ways. You might make it public, you might make it private. but it's a great way to do some writing, to express yourself and to work on your writing skills. And it's something that you can work into your daily routine to practice your productive skills in writing in the target language. You can make it private, so only you can see it, and then it's maybe more like a journal. Or you can make it public and share it with other friends and family so that they can encourage you and help you as you develop your writing skills. Okay, now with all of these things, with language learning online, it's important to try to find opportunities to collaborate. And this can seem difficult at times. We're sitting at home alone in our office, studying a language. And so you may say to yourself, how do I do this? How can I find opportunities to collaborate, and why? Collaboration is really important to achieve your language learning goals, especially around productive skills. And thankfully, with the internet, there are lots and lots of ways to collaborate. And collaboration is really important because it will help you improve your language productive and receptive skills while doing something that's meaningful and that is fun and interesting to you. So there's a lot of opportunities to collaborate. Let me share a few of them with you. The first is via language exchanges or tandems. There's different names for them. And what is this? This is if I'm learning Spanish, for example, and I speak English fluently already, I might find someone who's looking to learn English and speak Spanish already. And we would get together and we would have conversation in English and then in Spanish to both improve our language speaking skills in those languages. Now, there's an app called Tandem that's a little bit like Tinder, but not for dating. It's for language learning. So what it does is it pairs people together based on which languages they speak and which ones they want to learn. You can go on a place like Reddit. For those of you who don't know what Reddit is, it is a online forum. It's international, and there are just hundreds and thousands of different spaces focused on activities. So one of the spaces within Reddit is called Language Exchange. And you can go onto Reddit, it's free, and you can find a language exchange partner. You simply post which language you know, which language you'd like to learn, and it will match you together. Social media is another great way to advance your language learning goals and to find opportunities to collaborate. You can, for example, you might want to set up a social media account in the language that you're learning. So for example, maybe you set up a Twitter account if I'm learning Portuguese, I set up a Twitter account in Portuguese. I follow a lot of people who are Portuguese speakers, maybe Portuguese television stations and media. And I can also, in my account, try to send out tweets or make posts in the language I'm learning. So to try to connect with others through this language of interest. Another way, really simple way that you can use social media to contribute to your language learning goals is to just change the language on the interface within your social media to the language that you're learning. So if I use Facebook every day, I can change the menu in my Facebook to French, if that's the language I'm learning. So I'm seeing bits and pieces of that language every day. So thinking about your social media spaces, your consumption, and your accounts in light of your language learning goals can really help you. Gamification. So especially if you're someone who enjoys games and gaming competition in your personal life, adding some aspects of games and game principles into your language learning can help motivate you, and it can help make it more fun. So there's a lot of different ways you can add some aspects of games into your language learning. Let's look at a few of them. The first is language learning platforms or apps that are designed as games. See, they're either designed as games or have game elements. So one example is Duolingo, which some of you might know, which has points. You ascend through different levels. You get rewards if you complete certain exercises, and if you achieve a certain level of success. So that can help motivate us and keep us interested in learning languages. There are other platforms such as Quizlet that takes where you can either bring in your own information. So for example, if I'm studying certain vocabulary, or if I'm sets of words, I can bring my own information into Quizlet, and it will, it's a study tool, but it also has certain games. You can see here, there's study and then there's play. So it will bring in my language learning information and turn it into games where I have to match words and definitions, or, you know, kind of like shoot the words as they fall. And anyway, it turns my vocabulary learning into a game-like experience. There are also online, there are so many language learning games. I've put here a screenshot from digitaldialects.com, which has language learning games for many different languages. And some of these are about grammar, vocabulary, and lots of different aspects of these languages. And so they can be a lot of fun just to do if you have a few moments, or when you're driving somewhere, not while driving, if you're the passenger, but they can be a fun way to fill a few minutes. Finally, don't underestimate gaming systems or large-scale multiplayer games that aren't necessarily for language learning, but that you can participate in the language or languages you're learning. And it can really provide a fun and interesting way to experience, to take in the language, so working on your receptive skills, and also to use the language, whether it's with your voice or by chat. So if you already enjoy playing a game like, well, any game, League of Legends, Among Us, or anything else, search out playing that game in the language that you're learning, and you will start to achieve your learning goals without even realizing it, while just having fun.
Okay, so the next step is to create or select a program of study. You have some good options here. If you choose to create your program of study, review all that we've discussed today. These tips can be your guide. And then link learning objectives. These are your specific learning goals to the study tasks that you do. So in other words, what are your learning goals? What activities will you do to achieve these goals? For example, if your goal is to improve your reading, your study task might be to read online news articles every day in the target language. Then gather all of your resources, and finally make your action plan for online study. Or, and here's another great option, if you choose to select your program of study, this means that much of the setup and planning, all of that stuff will be done for you already by an instructor or by the program. You still need to identify your goals. That's really, really important. Then match your goals to the program. So if it's for the workplace, maybe you need a business communications course, or do you want to go to university? Maybe you need an English for academic purposes course. That's an EAP program. It all depends on your goals. So finally, next slide.
Oh, just maybe we might look at just a couple of examples, Tracy.
Oh, okay.
If you are, you know, as Tracy has mentioned, you might be creating your own program. If you're someone who really works well with self-directed or autonomous learning, you might be comfortable with creating your own program. If you're someone who really needs and prefers having a teacher, having other students, and following a set program, you might consider an online language learning course. And there are lots of different types of these courses. So you have everything from a MOOC, a massive open online course. And I've put an example up here, a course called English for the Workplace by the British Council. These courses generally tend to be free. They tend to be short. And they're open. So you might have a lot of people on the course. So this is an example of one. Now, you can see it's a free course, which is great. There are 500,000 people enrolled on this course. So you can imagine the content will be of high quality, but perhaps there's not as much attention from a teacher or an instructor. If you're someone for whom that's very important, you might consider something like an online language course. One example is like the courses we offer here at Dalhousie. And in these courses, it's like taking a course in face-to-face, but it's online. So you have an instructor, you have classmates learning with you. And so you can have the guidance as you progress through your course of study. Now, at Dalhousie, as Tracy was saying, you have to think about your goals and your short-term and long-term goals, as well as your interests. So are you interested in learning academic English? And so you might consider something like an online EAP program. Or are you interested in improving your English for business communication? If so, you might consider an online business communication course. Back to you, Tracy.
Okay. Great. So finally, get started. You need to review your plan. Again, I'd suggest reviewing the tips we discussed, jot down notes, brainstorm, get all of that stuff together. That's going to help you make that action plan. Set your start date, and then stay on track to success. Thank you very much. Those are our 10 tips.
Okay, so we have a few minutes for questions. So please, if you have any, pop them into the chat. Here you have our contact info if you'd like to be in touch to get more information about online language learning at Dalhousie or elsewhere. And we would love if you, just going back to getting started, what could be your first step to start your online language learning process? So throw that in the chat if you'd like.
There's just a nice comment from Heather here about just that she found the tips very helpful and that she'll check out a chatbot and Reddit, and that she uses Duolingo, sorry, and finds it really helpful. So that's great. Thanks, Heather, for sharing that.
Yeah, those are great. And having a combination of different tools is really the way to go. So as you've mentioned, Duolingo can help you work especially on vocabulary or low-level grammar, but then combining that with productive skills through a chatbot or a language exchange can really help you work on all aspects of your language learning. So it sounds like you're doing great. Other questions?
Yeah, other questions. We're just at our time here, but we can certainly just give a few additional minutes if there are any questions that people have that they want to ask Jennifer and Tracy.
It sounds like
Okay.
no. Hopefully everyone has just gone immediately to set up some social media accounts, in the language that they're learning. So maybe
Exactly.
they've started right away.
I think just some really great suggestions, and I think really opens our mind to all of the different opportunities that there are. I think someone speaking from my own experience, learning a kind of a language in an academic setting is very different than applying it to social settings. And so I think that sometimes we just look at it through one lens, but it's really important to be able to socialize that language. And so you've offered some great suggestions, and so we'll kind of wrap it up there, but wanted to let all of you know that we are recording today's webinar, and we will be sharing it on our YouTube channel later today. So we will be reaching out to all of you with a link, as well as the details that Jennifer and Tracy have included in the final slide of their presentation today. So we will be including that as well. If there are any questions, we would encourage you to email esl@dal.ca. We'll also include that in the email. And before you officially click away from Zoom, we'd encourage you to fill out questions that we have for a survey. We'd love to get your feedback on today's webinar so that we can always improve. And so we look forward to hearing your feedback. And thanks very much again, Jennifer and Tracy, for hosting today's webinar. And thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks everyone.
Have a good day.
Thanks.
Thank you.